Welcome back to Third Coast Podcast. We're live at Krampus, and I am joined with the one, the only, Evans of Two Tone Merigold.
Thank you. Yep.
So, gotta ask, first ever podcast?
It's actually, I guess, my second of, podcasts that have been actually released. Alaric Frick of Quarks had me and Greg Wads on when we were all in St. Augustine doing the Bridge Alliance Fest. What was that, summer before last? And yeah, we all just set up in our Airbnb and recorded an episode in there. That was cool.
Big shout out to the Big Al podcast.
Yep.
Podcast broadcast.
Big Al. Yep, me and Spicy Ranch, Greg Wads did a little sit down, covered a lot of bases, a lot of topics.
Oh, all right. So I'm going to dive right into it. You have an interesting approach to your musical setup. You are is it like DJing with the guitar? Or, I mean, it's like could you elaborate on that?
It's pretty much, DJ with a little guitar thrown in. So, I'd make a lot of edits, a lot of remixes, and just like weave things together, make a producer set out of it. It's hip-hop based electronic. A lot of my inspirations, Pretty Lights, Grizz and Grammatic were big influences on me, like in the early 2010s. And just, when I first saw a big, like, hard-hitting electronic set with live instruments, that really is what inspired me to kind of do what I do. So I'll make weird noises on guitar, and do like some drum machine and like chop up beats and stuff like that. It's a work in progress.
So how long have you been doing that for?
I've really started actually putting time and effort in buying gear and doing it over COVID. Right before COVID, I played a house party, and that was the first ever. Living on Bank Street, New Orleans, Louisiana, we had a little house party, me and my next door neighbor in the other half of the house, and everybody loved it, and I was like, I don't know if this is going to sound good or not. But then COVID hit, and I was not able to book any shows, and then the Quadraholics had me on. That was Halloween 2021, and that was my first actual, like, booked gig at Santos on Lower Decatur in New Orleans. And it was dope. It was a late-night Halloween jam, and from there on, it's just been going.
All right. So you mainly play in New Orleans at the moment?
Yep, it's all, mostly New Orleans. Of course, I'll come out here to Oakdale. Like I said, the summer before last, we played Bridge Alliance Fest in St. Augustine, Florida. On the way there, I booked a gig with Whisper Party in Gulf Shores, Alabama. So, yeah, I guess that was only 2 out-of-state gigs, and, the rest of them are all in-state. Played a show a couple weeks ago in Mississippi. So, local, mostly New Orleans.
Oh, all right. Well, it seems like you're getting very diverse and traveling state to state. That's what it's about. That's how you get out there.
Yeah, it's tough to, it's always tough to, like, actually try to book tours and, like, do long runs and stuff like that. It takes a lot of dedication. You got to have wheels. When you're packing gear, it's kind of an in-between. DJs, a lot of times you can get away with just packing a USB, fly to gigs, and that makes it a lot easier. You don't have to tote all your gear in a van like a band. Which with me, I kind of have the best and the worst of both worlds. I have enough equipment, I can't just check that, as luggage on a flight, so I have to drive. So, I have to, have a big enough vehicle to carry everything and drive to gigs, which, that kind of limits how much I can tour. But I've started, booking some out-of-state gigs, and we'll see where it takes me. Festivals is really, I'd love to play, like camping festivals and big festivals. That's my next, that's in my 5-year plan, I guess.
Oh, all right. So what elements are different? Because being a regular DJ has their own thing, and you have a different element that you bring with the guitar. Is that harder, do you think? Or is it something that draws a different type of attraction to your sets and to your music? Because it is different and it's not common.
Yeah, I think it definitely does give you an extra layer of attachment to the crowd when you're playing an instrument. You know, a lot of times people can kind of get lost in what you're doing on the board when you're mixing sets and stuff like that. But when you're playing an instrument, you know, that's an extra level of connection. They can see what you're doing. They can see, you know, what's making the music. But yeah, it's the guitar is definitely harder than the DJing. It's you can do some, you know, you can get fancy with DJing with effects and like and transitions and loops and stuff like that. But that's just all timing. Whereas guitar, it's like, you know, there's definitely been sets where I just wasn't playing my best and I knew it, and you know, or I couldn't hear myself very well and the monitors are out of my amp. But it's definitely easier to mess up on guitar than it is to mess up on the board.
So do you run everything through the board, or is it got its own, like, guitar has its own amp and then you run your board off different speakers too?
No, so I run through a tube amp. It's a Vox. So I'll mic up the amp. It's an old tube amp, so it's got a really warm sound, kind of classic sound. That's the Vox is the type of amps that Brian May would play out of Queen. So it's got a really warm, if you imagine like that tone, like of Queen's guitar. It's pretty overdriven and warm. And I'll usually mic that up, and that'll run straight out. And then I'll run the DJ side through Serato. And the DAW I use in the studio is Reaper. It's a really cheap little Reaper plug.
Yeah.
A lot of people use Ableton. But,
I've heard of both of those before.
One of these days, I'll probably end up migrating to Ableton, just because they're coming so far with the Ableton Live thing, where you can. It's just so much more versatile. But yeah, I can't get away from that beautiful tube amp. Even though you can't go direct out digital of that old amp, you got to mic it up. But it just sounds so good. I can't get away from it. And it's so heavy. It's a 40-pound amp, and I lug it to every gig, and I'm like, I'm gonna just kick this thing to the curb one day, but I can't. It sounds too good.
All right. Is 40 pounds heavy for an amp?
Actually, it's not bad. There's heavier amps people lug around, 100-pound amps and shit. One of these days I'll get a dolly. But it depends on, with New Orleans, depending on where you're playing, you know, French Quarter and down in the belly of the beast, you got to find good parking, because you're might be walking that amp for a block or so, get everything set up. But yeah,
parking ain't ideal in New Orleans for sure. In most spots,
depends where you're at. Yeah, depends on which part of town you're in. Like I said, down in the French Quarter, it's tough. You gotta squeeze in there.
So how did you become? Like, how did you come to find the Void and Krampus?
Man, so the very first Void that Charlie and Will threw, house party out in the rice paddies down in Oale, I went to that. I was an Iceman fan, living in Lake Charles, and I went out there, and that was the very first one. You know, it was a blast. And then next couple years, we're outside of Sulphur, Louisiana, at our Brett Manuel. I knew him from going to McNeese and being in Lake Charles. But that was a cool venue. And then, one thing led to another. Ended up out here. And I moved to New Orleans in 2017. And, that was before I ever really... It was about 2019 before I really started, like, getting an idea, like, okay, this is what I want to do for music. Before that, I played guitar and... Back in Lake Charles, man, just, played in, like, country cover bands, playing blues licks. I hated the songs, but I loved the more bluesier, like, side. That's really what I cut my teeth on, was blues and minor pentatonic scales. But, moving to New Orleans in 2017, just brought me closer to a lot of guys. In Lake Charles, I knew Chris Runny, I knew, AJ, David LeBlanc, if anyone out here remembers him. He moved away a couple years ago, but he was my roommate in New Orleans when I was living on Bank Street. And the rest is history. I'm stuck in NOLA now.
Ain't a bad place to be stuck at, in my opinion.
It's not. The music scene is great. It's of all ages. There's the old timers, the legends of New Orleans, of that scene, and then there's also a burgeoning young crowd, and like of all different genres, any genre you can think of. It's really a great music scene in New Orleans. It's very, it's a friendly city to it. You can go all night. There's all kinds of different venues that do music, and there's a lot of different genres that pop up. A lot of cool bands that come out of there.
For sure. So you said that you were playing blues guitar, so guitar was before the DJing.
Yep.
So how did you get your start on guitar? What led you down that road?
Man, I started playing acoustic with a friend. We would just learn a couple songs and ditty around. It was senior year of high school. And then, yeah, first year after high school, going to McNeese, being in Lake Charles, Louisiana. A friend of mine who I would jam with, we did a Secret Santa, and everybody like drew each other's names out of a hat, and we got each other gifts. And he went above and beyond and got me my first electric guitar and amp, and that was just what catapulted me. Like I probably wouldn't have done it for myself at that time. I wasn't really taking it seriously. But then Tyler Augustine, who was also a good friend of mine in Lake Charles, shout out T-Og, he really took me under his wing, and he was a blues man. And he's very good. He played with Will Murray in a band, actually, called Free Will, a little three-piece.
Oh, all right. I didn't know that.
Yep. Tyler Augustine, shout out T-Og. He took it seriously, and he literally, like, with us just being friends and me never, like, saying, hey, you want to give me lessons? We would just do it. We would hang out for days at a time, and he would just drill me. And we would, he would show me all the different effects and pedals and different guitars and how the different amps sound and stuff. He had a great like studio space, and we would just jam. And he brought me so far. Like my like skill went from like nothing to something. He taught me all my skills and everything. That was when I was about 19, 20 years old. So yeah, I was doing that for years before I started doing the DJ thing. Started going to festivals, camping festivals, and went to. Me and Chris and Ronnie actually were attached at the hip for a few festivals. Went to Wakarusa in Arkansas. We went to Euphoria Fest in Austin. We went to Middlelands, which is a one-time deal, never happened again, in the Ren Fairgrounds in Houston, or in Todd Mission near Houston, Texas. And so that's when I first got I was exposed to musicians who were doing the electronic music with live instrumentals. Grammatic was a big one that really, it was an aha moment seeing Grammatic. It was a guitar player and a keyboard player, and they'd do hip-hop bass beats and breaks and really cool music. And that's when, I started gearing towards that's what I want to do. And yeah, about 2019 is when I really made that a reality. Got, bought a DAW, got gear, a sound card and recording equipment, and actually got serious about it. But yep.
It's been that same journey ever since, huh?
Yep, been on the road. Got started dropping music last year. Dropped 4 tracks last year in 2023. Dropped 2 this year, 2024. I've got one more. I was hoping to release in December, but it's going to probably be January or February. I'll have the next track out.
And where can the listeners find your music at?
Spotify, SoundCloud, yep, Two-Tone Merigold. Give it a click. I'm also on Bandcamp if you want to buy my music, have it for yourself, throw it in your sets, or just listen to it at home. Yep. I'm doing singles at a time. One of these days I might work toward an album, or I'll probably start with an EP, 4 or 5 song album. But thus far I've just been releasing singles. I was featured on the Quadraholics' last album that they released. Did a track with them and laid down some guitar. That was awesome. But yep, just trying to keep churning it out, one single at a time.
All right. But that's good, though. At least you're putting your music out there and you have stuff where someone can go and listen to. How did you come up with your name?
I don't know, actually. It's funny. I'm not sure. I think I was just playing around with some wordplay. And, it's got a little, I don't know, alliteration to it, like Two-Tone Merigold. I have no idea, to be honest. It just kind of...
Just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, I think I have a ton of notes in my phone, and I think that's probably just a notepad I was playing around with different, what should my name be? And just doing some wordplay, and, I don't know, it came out. It was did anyone take this yet? And it's Googling, every way you could spell this and see if anyone, used this name before. And it was no. It was where did I hear this? I'm sure this was something I heard before and just didn't, register it. But no, it wasn't taken, so it's all right. Two-Tone Merigold it is.
Yeah, I've seen a thing where a little short where this dude was criticizing band names, and it's one word band names great, 2-word band names horrible, 3-word band names perfect, 4 what are you doing, 5 why are you still adding?
Man, what about Rainbow Kitten Surprise? But yeah, there's some longer band names out there. A lot of the producers and DJs, they'll have like little, just one, you know, short little name, something that's easy to search. And sometimes I'm like, oh, maybe I should have picked something simpler. Like, you got the 2 dash tone. It's like, oh, maybe I should take the hyphen out. Maybe I should spell Merigold with an A instead of an E. I decided on M-E-R, Merigold. That's, I guess, the British way of spelling it. Whereas usually when, you know, in the U.S., it's M-A-R, Merigold.
Oh, all right.
But I'm sticking with it. It's ingrained at this point. There's no turning back.
Yeah, it's too far gone.
Yeah, too late.
So when you're putting your music out, do you ever run into any copyright issues from being a DJ? Because
On the pure songs that I make myself and release, no, not yet. I did have one when I first started. I was just doing kind of remixes and laying guitar down and doing some synth or like making some changes and edits. And I tried to release one, I forget what it was an edit of, on SoundCloud, and like a day later it was like, nope, it was like, this is a copy of this song, which was what I used, you know. I was like, oh crap, I can't do that. I have to be more original.
I bring that up because on the episodes when we do like the sit down episodes, we do an artist of the week, right? And we've always done it on Spotify for years, but I started noticing like when I would add the music at the end of the YouTube video for the podcast, copyright would come up.
Yeah.
So now, like if you listen to it on the podcast on the platforms, you'll get the artist of the week and the song at the end. But on YouTube, you can't put the song in there because you have to wait on the artist to come back and agree. And sometimes they don't check their YouTube. You'll be surprised on how many artists don't pay attention to their YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And then a copyrighted flag your video and it won't be seen. So
Yeah, and there's so many middlemen. Sometimes it's not even up to the artist. It might be their label or whoever owns the rights to all that, you know.
Yeah.
And you got to go through them, you know. The artist can be totally 100% okay with it, but no musical artist nowadays really owns their work, which that's how it's been for a long time, you know, record labels and stuff like that. You're selling the rights of, you know, of your work to them, but yeah, it's a hairball sometimes.
So besides your music, what's something else interesting about yourself that the listeners might want to hear?
I work at NASA.
Yeah, I was trying
That
to
you're
lead it in
leading with?
there. Yeah, catching them context clues.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm an engineer, and it was a great, you know, it was awesome being able to hook this job. But yeah, that's what I was doing. You know, I came to New Orleans in 2017. I already had a degree from McNeese in Mass Comm. I started in engineering and totally could not do it. Wasn't ready. Like, I went to Maryville High School, which is just an hour from here. You know, graduated with 38 kids. We didn't have any AP classes. I was not ready for college. So yeah, switched majors out of engineering, got that degree, and yeah, worked a few entry level jobs. Hated it. It was terrible pay. It was just like meh, you know, work. And I was like, I'm gonna go back and get my engineering degree. Went to UNO. It's the only game left in town. Tulane dropped their engineering program after Katrina, and it's just a commuter school. It's very boring. It's even quieter than McNeese, which is not a big college, you know. And but they had a partnership with the NASA facility that's in New Orleans. That's a NASA Michoud Assembly Facility, and they make all of the core stage of the SLS rockets, which are the upcoming Artemis moon missions. It's going to take put the first woman on the surface of the moon, and yeah, do a lot of research and stuff. They're going to do a whole new lander, like moon buggy, going to the South Pole, which has never been visited before, of the moon. And yeah, I never realized New Orleans makes like the whole core stage for the SLS system.
The core stage is that like the rocket boosters?
That's the whole middle. The
Oh.
boosters are on the outside; those go first, and the core stage is essentially the bottom 90% of the rocket. It takes a lot of fuel to get out of the atmosphere. That's where the most energy is expended to actually get into orbit. And so yeah, it's all the fuel systems and all that, the engines and the tail skirt and all that, and also Lockheed Martin makes the actual crew capsule, the Orion crew capsule there at Michoud as well. Yeah, we ship it out. It goes out on these big rollers. It goes down to Pegasus, which is a huge covered air-conditioned barge, and it slides in there and goes out down the industrial canal out around Florida into Cape Canaveral. And they pull it in
Oh,
there.
it's all about boat travel.
Yep, it's a barge, big, covered, climate-controlled barge, and they, wheel them out from New Orleans all the way around Florida to Cape Canaveral, Kennedy Space Center on the Atlantic, out in Florida.
See, I would have never knew that about New Orleans. That big of a rocket industry is down there.
I didn't either. I kind of heard that they were there, and also just an hour away from New Orleans, Stennis Space Center in Picayune, Mississippi. They do all the rocket testing. They have these huge towers, test stands, and they'll fire the rockets and test them and make changes and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a big NASA presence in this area. I never realized either until, I'm glad I ended up going back to school at UNO instead of McNeese. Nothing against the Cowboys, but probably would have ended up in oil and gas, which are high-paying engineering jobs. But, it's a lot cooler to work for NASA than to...
I'm about to say, you're probably the first person I've ever met that worked for NASA, so that's cool. And the first person on the show that worked for NASA. That's another cool thing.
Let's go. Firsts.
Double first.
Hell yes.
That's great, though. That's cool. It's very interesting.
It's fun. It is interesting work. I actually enjoy getting up and going to work every day, which is all I ask for,
That's what you should want, in life. If you can achieve that, you're doing something fucking right in the world.
So many people, and myself included, there's so many jobs I've held down where I just got up in the morning, it's like, oh, back to this.
Back to this bullshit.
But yeah, this is, it's interesting, keeps me busy, and it's, great first job out of college, that's for sure. But yeah.
So, are you part of a Gumbo team this year?
No, one of these days I might join a team. We'll see. The last 2 years I've not. I've played music the last couple years, doing late night stuff in the warehouse. One of these days, maybe I'll start a team. Of course, everybody thinks their recipe's the best. I've got my recipe that my grandma and my mom made, and I love, but I'm not good with criticism. I don't want my family recipe being criticized. Like, it was trash. Your family's recipe.
This is the worst gumbo I've ever eaten in my fucking life. I've ate it my whole life. No.
It is an interesting, some people prefer the dark roux, some people prefer the lighter roux. So, it is definitely an opinionated game, but it's interesting seeing how the blind taste tests go and what the judges, think is the best. So it's definitely a lot of different flavors. There's a lot of different ways you can make it, and they always do end up tasting different, have different consistencies. But
what's your favorite type of gumbo?
I like mine a little bit. I don't know. It depends. You can make a really good dark roux, but it's also really easy to mess up a dark roux.
Yeah.
If a dark roux is done really well, that's a tough one, man. Because I think I prefer more of a lighter roux usually, and for making it, of course, I make a lighter roux just because I think like I said, it's a little easier to mess up the darker roux. But got to cook it down without burning it.
I like mine more like the shredded chicken style instead of the big chunks of breast meat.
Uh-huh.
Like when you boil down a chicken, you tear it apart and then you make your gumbo.
Mm-hmm. That just melts in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's how we always ate gumbo, from chickens out of the yard.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. My mom is retiring soon, and she wants to get chickens. She wants to get bees, too. That's the two things. She wants chickens and bees. She's going to have some
that's
hives.
interesting.
That's what she wants her hobbies to be. But, yeah, yard eggs are the best. It's always great to get fresh produce and, instead of getting it from the store.
Yeah.
Chickens are good people.
Your mom lives in New Orleans, or she lives in...
Nope, Maryville, Louisiana.
Maryville.
Yeah, it's about an hour from
That's
here.
where you grew up?
Yep.
That's an hour away from here? Where's that close to?
Just outside of DeRidder.
Ah, okay.
It's on the road. It's pretty much on the Texas border, on the Sabine River. I grew up on the Sabine River, fishing the Sabine, and I graduated with 38 kids. Oakdale's a big city compared to Maryville.
That's not saying much.
Yeah.
I graduated with like 80 people, I think.
Yeah.
So not much higher.
That was Oakdale. That was here.
Yeah. Yeah, I graduated from big old Oakdale.
Yeah, we all have a McDonald's and a Popeyes. It's big living.
What y'all got? Just them the dollar stores?
$1 General. That's it.
Yeah, you're definitely in small town America there.
We can't keep anything there, man. It's like we've had mom and pop shops. We used to have a grocery, a local. It's called Sladen's Grocery. But after she sold it, there was nothing else that popped up except for Dollar Generals. There's been some mom and pop restaurants pop up. They never last long. It's too small. No one's, people are just passing through. You'll blink and miss it.
Well, is there something special about Maryville that might attract someone just to visit?
I think it was a good, for visiting, no. I think it was a good place to grow up. It was small, it had all the perks and the downsides of a small town. Everybody knew everybody knew everyone's business. You couldn't get away with anything. But also, you knew everybody, the whole class, our graduating class was pretty tight with each other. There wasn't any real cliques. We were too small for that, which is good. It's good to know your neighbors, on a personal level. And, so it's got the ups and the downs, but it was also very boring. The nearest theater was Lake Charles or Leesville, an hour away. It was just one public school, no private schools. The nearest private school was an hour away, too. I think Lake Charles is the closest private school. But, it was country living. And after, at this point in my life, I'm not ready to go back yet, but, I miss the country living sometimes, even though I have enjoyed city living, playing music, and, the New Orleans lifestyle, which is a lot more than people think, People think New Orleans, they think bourbon, but it's a lot more to the French Quarter than Bourbon Street. There's a lot more to New Orleans than the French Quarter. There's just all kinds of stuff to get into. There's all kinds of cool festivals and events. The culture's cool. It actually feels like a small town, and it's a city. It's a very green city. It's not a concrete jungle. Lots of beautiful wildlife. And, out at Nassamishu, it's out in the east, which is still in New Orleans. It's still in the city. It's in Orleans Parish, but it's in the east in the swamp. There's hogs and coyotes and alligators. We had to pull an alligator out of a sump a couple years ago. There was hogs running on the levee like a few weeks ago. One got hit. There was a dead hog outside the gate. Apparently they have to run coyotes off. I haven't seen any coyotes yet, but New Orleans is weird like that. It's in the middle of the swamp, but it's it's fun though. I've enjoyed it.
So what's your favorite thing about Oakdale since you've been coming all these years now?
Dude, the community has taken this whole thing in, with the Void and Krampus. When it first moved here, when Bill, when they finally gave the okay, and it was like the first Void here in Oakdale on the property, I was like, coming from Maryville and that experience, I was like, well, how would people in Maryville react to this? And I'm like, they might run everybody off,
Yeah.
But the community has embraced it, and I love that. I love that, people come out here for the Gumbo cook-off, get a lot of locals, and, everybody just comes out here and has fun, listens to music, and gets down. It's a good time, and I'm really proud of Oakdale and the community for allowing this to happen, because it's really a cool thing. It's really a beautiful thing. It's a good crowd.
It's something that I never thought would happen around here, and here this last year, there's a few people I know. Like I said earlier, I'm bad with names, so I ain't gonna butcher y'all's names. But there's a few people from Oakdale that was skeptical about it, and then they finally came out here to Void this past year, and they said they loved it, and it was a great experience and stuff. And of course, I know people from Oakdale, so you see the chatter on Facebook or whatever, and it's still got haters out there, but it's starting to come around, and I think Krampus is a big part of that too. And I always love, I just went a while ago, I was telling you, I just went and got the biggest bag I could find and just filled that thing up with toys, and it's just the whole community, the whole vibe, and just everybody's just doing this for good and having fun too.
Yep, it's all for a good cause. That's good that they see that and have given it a chance. The road cleanup, that was something what Krampus started as. That's trying to give back to the community and show the community that this is a nonprofit. We're trying to give back and do things for a cause. It's not just a big party. It's it's an experience, dude. It's a music and arts festival in Oakdale, Louisiana. And it just sometimes I'll forget how special that is. Like, as someone who grew up near here, it's a whole different vibe, and it's I would have never imagined it growing up. Nothing ever really brought me to Oakdale. A lot of family, friends and stuff would come to Buddy's and get meat because that's how good it is. But, you know, the fact that there's this, you know, beautiful music and arts festival here is something special.
And I like how it grows and changes every year into something a little bit different but the same, but also it brings just such new creativity every year.
It's taken on a life of its own for sure.
And then seeing the people come back that you met and seeing how excited they are to give to the cause and be a part of it and give back to the Oakdale community, it's a very special thing.
Yep.
Chuck and them got something good going on.
Yep. And I love, yeah, and they're like still actively thinking of how to push it forward too, which is awesome. You know, it's great, yeah. It's an awesome crowd too. Like everybody that's out here are just good people. Can't beat it. Trustworthy people. You know, you don't have to worry about thieves or, you know, anyone doing you wrong. It's just a lot of good people that come here every year. It's always just a great crowd, which is awesome.
Yeah, and you brought up like there ain't no thieves or nothing. I had lost actually a pullover, a Ninja Turtle pullover, and I ain't thought about that bitch in like 6-7 months, and then I go into the hardwood to help Chuck with something, and it's laying right there on the counter.
Yep.
I was like, man, that's my pullover. He's like, oh yeah, we
There
found
is.
it.
Yep. Yeah, a friend of mine, I think this was the first year it was here, so that was like 3 years ago. She left a hoodie, and it was like $100 somewhere, and somebody like returned it to the Murder Shack bar at the Barrio, and she came back and got it like the next day. It's like, damn.
That's crazy there.
It is.
Whoever did that, good. Kudos for
them.
being a good Samaritan.
If you're out there listening, good job. That's what it's all about. You know, people are safe here. It's, you know, that's, you don't want to be looking over your shoulder all the time. You know, you're among your friends, and it's, you know, easy to relax and have a good time because everybody's, you know, great people.
You got to tell me about that coat you're wearing. What is going on there? Is that a
Quilted,
quilt?
baby.
Did you make that?
Quilt and built. Nope, I found this. I went to St. Augustine last weekend and saw, or it was 2 weekends ago, saw Pretty Lights play in St. Augustine. And Coyote McCutcheon, his mom, owns a thrift store there in St. Augustine. And I walked in, it was right by the front door. And I was like, oh, that's mine. $20.
It's not bad. I like it. It's
warm,
unique for
too.
sure.
Yep. This is a good time to get a coat. I didn't think it would be warm. I was like, this isn't going to keep me warm, but it is. It's toasty.
That's good. Big shout out to Coyote.
Let's go, Coyote McCutcheon.
Well, bro, I ain't going to hold you up too much longer. At the end of each show, we always do words of wisdom, and I was wondering, do you have any words of wisdom for our listeners out there?
Keep at it. Don't give up. There's a lot of, you know, whatever it is. It could be something micro, something macro. You know, if it's something you're pursuing or a hobby or a passion, keep it up. If it's, you know, a job you have to slug through, you know, to provide for you or your family or, you know, do whatever you need to do, you know, just don't give up. Keep at it because it's going to pay off.
Shit, yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining, bro. Can you give us your handles and where the listeners can find you one more time, please?
Yeah, so Two-Tone Merigold, you know, on Instagram at Two-Tone Merigold. It's TWO2TONE. Merigold. Yeah, Bandcamp, Spotify, SoundCloud. Wherever you listen to music, it's on Apple, Amazon. Check it out. Give the tracks a listen. Yeah, I'm going to be releasing the next single probably February is when I'll be dropping the next one.
All right, sounds good. Well, thank you so much, Evans. And for listeners, I'm Joe What It Do Gators, Krampus 2024, and we are out.